Welcome to Life Support. This is the weekly Star Trek show that explores how Star Trek can help us boldly go in our own lives, better ourselves, and the rest of humanity. I am Dr. Ali Mattu, joined as always by my friend...
Hey, it's Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. And to finish our mission, also in the words of a once again very famous captain...
To be even more famous.
Yes. To make sure we have a little fun along the way, too. He also said something about ruffling feathers, and one of these weeks we might just ruffle a few feathers, but we'll see what happens.
Probably will.
In the best Captain Pike tradition, we'll see about some feather ruffling. Yeah.
So welcome to the show, everyone. We are this is episode 5, and this week we are talking about... Looks like I haven't put the frame on that tells you all what we are talking about today, so my bad. I'm going to put that on. We're talking about anxiety in the Final Frontier. Specifically, we're looking at two characters. Who are we looking at today, Larry?
We are looking at some fearsomely awesome... we're looking at some fearfully awesome... characters. Of course, when you think of therapy and counseling and anxiety and fear in Star Trek, you have to think of Mr. Broccoli. You have to think of
Mr. Broccoli.
Full name. Do you know his full name?
Reginald something Barclay.
It's Reginald Endicott Barclay III.
Endicott Barclay III. What a name to pass on.
Which is part of the mystique. And then somebody with a much simpler name, Commander Saru on Discovery, who's kind of come into our lexicon, much more recently. But and they're different. They're different stripes. One is is a typical nurture or nature guy, and the other one, it was kind of genetic, or was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We're gonna explore that. Today's these are two fan favorites, so we're very excited to talk about these characters with you. Today's question, to get us started, let us know in the comments below what moment from Barclay or Saru's story best captures anxiety. Maybe it best captures anxiety in the way you've experienced it. Maybe it's a moment you identified with. Maybe it's a moment that was just a really good moment in Star Trek. Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. And yes, a lot of folks, Larry, are loving your setup this week. You're looking and sounding good.
Good. It's amazing what happens when you get into 1998 technology. No, I'm kidding.
Some of that super futuristic technology from 1996 from the future, but Voyager just captured it. Right. That tech?
Right. Thank you, Captain Braxton.
Yeah.
Okay.
We made a few upgrades.
Yes, we have made a few upgrades. Yeah, Some of you may have even caught our upgrade test over the week.
We did a small test on Wednesday night on Twitch.
I hear we were big on Twitch, Ali.
Yeah. All right, so if this is your first time at Life Support, welcome to our community. We are so happy to have you here. This is a show where we have a lot of fun, and we talk about Star Trek as it relates to mental health and how it can help us to improve our lives. We're going to have a lot of fun. Larry and I are going to explore these elements, and there's an opportunity for you to join in as well. How do they do that, Dr. Trek?
Well, look, we've got the chat window here. We are multi-streaming across. And I want to say for the first time, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Yeah, we plugged in your YouTube channel now.
My YouTube channel is plugged in too. So you can watch us on YouTube on the Psych Show probably, or you can even watch them on my Nation YouTube channel. But Facebook Live I've got a big community on Facebook Live for Trekland Tuesdays Live. You got your Facebook channel is turned on. And we have this, our Twitch channel is just going like bang busters. We've got 4 followers now on Twitch, and folks caught us the other night on our Twitch test. So yeah, you can chat in there, or you can Skype call in, and yes, we've worked the bugs out on this, hopefully. You can Skype us, as you see there, on Life Support Live host.
Yes.
So please try to, you can be on camera. Don't be fearful. Don't be anxious. Come on in with us and share your thoughts sometime during the hour.
The Twitch audience is growing. Cairo47 said, "I'm switching to Twitch just so you have more people over there." So thank you, thank you for that. Good to have you, folks.
Fans are so small D democratic base. They're like, I'll help.
We're happy to have you wherever you might be. So let's get started with the briefing room right now. So Larry, we were talking about this. What makes Saru and Barclay so unique? And one of the things that seemed to really stick out is Barclay was the first time we saw a character who was not the best at everything.
So there's this thing, and it wasn't, generically on the original series, they were, people were a better. It was supposed to be the 23rd century, and people were a better breed. And of course, Roddenberry was trying to say, well, look, it's in the future. We haven't blown ourselves up. We haven't killed the planet. We obviously had to have persevered. We've all learned to get along. That was one of the aspirational, wonderful things that made Star Trek stand out in the middle of the Vietnam War and the Cold War, and go down the line, and the civil rights strife, and all the strives that can separate people. Look, we united to survive, and now we're looking for it out there and bringing that renewed philosophy out. Okay, we all knew that was the strife, but still, Scotty and McCoy and Kirk could get into some scrapes and fight, even when there wasn't an alien influence that they were under, right? There were times they could disagree. And Gene, after being guruified for the 80s.
Between TOS and TNG.
Yes, we're going from TOS to TNG. The 80s and the 70s and the 80s. So rather than having his lead captain be, James Bond, crossed with John F. Kennedy, we've got Elder Gene creating, I don't know, the Dwight Eisenhower of Starship captains, only make him French with an English accent. So everything is a little more studied and refined, but Gene has said he doubles down even more on this, the perfect humans meme, which drove writers up the wall, and it took 2 or 3 or 4 years to get what that meant. And, drama, and because writers say, I'm writing, drama is about conflict. How can you do drama if you don't have, your wackadoodle, as Maury Hurley said, your wackadoodle sci-fi ideas are one thing, but we're trying to do a TV show here, But that heightened sense of perfect humans, it was hard to find it, but you would do it. So, but against all of that, here comes Reginald Endicott Barclay III. It's like a lightning bolt, because here's a guy who is anxious and stutters and stammers and has all kinds of brilliant guy. Obviously, that's what sustained him. He went through the regular, Starfleet course here. He went to the academy and graduated and has been assigned. But he's been assigned at places, and he's done great work. But he was on the Zukov, which I'd forgotten I loved.
Oh, the Zukov. Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. But he's a guy who's got some issues dealing socially. And, does perfect humanity in the 24th century mean you're perfect on all counts? Is there no room for the brilliant, odd genius? Whatever.
Yeah. That's so. As a kid,
and that's what that posed. Hollow Pursuits was his debut in the 3rd season, and boy, did we get introduced to Barclay.
Well, I so loved watching Barclay episodes as I was growing up, because he, the thing that really appealed to me about Star Trek, and why I love Star Trek so much more, why I got into it so much more than Star Wars, is this was us in the future. And characters like Barclay I could identify with them. The rest of the crew, they were the ones who I wanted to be like. They were the aspirational goals, which I feel like a lot of TNG is. TNG is this aspirational goal. But Barclay was one of those characters who struggled. And I liked seeing those struggles. We see more characters like that later on in Star Trek. O'Brien is a really great example of a character who's struggling with his own racism and the Cardassian War. Exactly. Like every sequel series that comes after that. And there was a character who struggled with his own xenophobia with the Romulans in TOS. I'm blanking on the characters. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. We had seen troubled people along. Well, we obviously they had bad morals early on. We had Ben Finney who who spiraled down. He pulled a Raffi. He had one bad moment. Well, Raffi didn't have a bad moment. She'd had a troubled life, but she was holding it together. Ben Finney, remember, hid out in the pod.
Yes.
And let himself be presumed dead to get back. It was a vindictive. It was a vengeance thing of getting back at Kirk for being on report one time when they were younger, and he festers on it for 15, 20 years. So yes, we did have the trouble, but they would be the troubled people who would either commit some egregious act or we're going to send them off for some treatment, or or we'll have Captain Garth will become, mentally unstable and be solved by some powder in a vial or something.
Right, and Barclay's a character who we actually got to know over the course of many episodes. He's a character that actually got an arc. Rebecca says that Barclay always felt like misunderstood comic relief. We're supposed to find his holodeck amusing, but I think a lot of us can sympathize in having a fantasy world we all feel safe in, something we're going to talk about in a moment here. And Cairo says, I love Barclay was suddenly a completely different person and showed his brilliance when people took him seriously and his anxiety went away. And that's what I love about Barclay, as opposed to all those other characters you mentioned, Larry. Here is someone who is struggling and contributing to the crew, can make a difference. There's this wonderful episode in TNG where there's a... Is it Masterpiece Society? Is that what it's called?
The Perfect People?
The Perfect People, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and Geordi's visor technology is what saves them from disaster, but he is someone who probably would never have been born in that society. I love the message of that episode about, this is something Temple Grandin, who has autism and has really created a lot of innovative ways to humanely slaughter animals. She says the world needs all types of brains. And I think Star Trek has really embraced that in many ways, until Barclay, though, it never really embraced that as it relates to mental health. And that is the big difference I think Barclay made, and really set the stage for characters who also struggled in their own way. You don't have to be a perfect human to be in the 21st century. You do need to aspire towards growth, though. And we see that in all these characters that struggle. They're struggling and they're aspiring to be better. I love that.
Yeah. But I mean, you mentioned this the other day when we were planning, but I'd never thought about that. But Barclay really was, structurally for Star Trek anyway, was the break, was the foundational character that allowed us to, I don't want to say had a flood of broken people who were still heroic, but he kind of set the mold for that, because then after that we have people. I was just thinking, we have people like Ensign Rowe, who had a troubled past and still had a lot to contribute and was very heroic, but had their demons, as it were. And then you just get into all the other, DS9 and Voyager and and I heard a little thing called Discovery.
And Discovery. So that brings us to Saru, which we should talk about. Also been a fan favorite. I know in the comments there's been a lot of love towards Barclay, and there's a little bit more complex feelings towards Saru. On Discovery, for fans of Discovery, Saru does seem to be a fan favorite, acted by, Larry, help me out here.
Doug Jones.
Who is...
The great Doug Jones.
Great Doug Jones. Many of you will, I was going to say many of you will recognize him from many of his other roles, but you probably won't, because he disappears into these roles and all these prosthetics, and he just becomes these characters. I have really loved Saru for similar reasons, and yet I've also been frustrated by Saru and where he went. But let's talk about Saru a little bit, Larry. How did this character so different than all the other characters we see on that bridge as well, in a similar way as Barclay is?
Good thing there, Ali, since that was kind of his role in the show. I'm not into tokenism, but Star Trek always has the token alien on the bridge, right, at least. And yeah, that was Saru. And, it's like with everything else of Star Trek, and whatever you thought of Discovery, I just want to say this. I think Saru is like a lightning rod for the Discovery cast. I think with all the Sturm and Drang around, with all the controversy around Discovery and the pitched battles and the troubled history that it had, and it's much now grounded better. I'm excited to see what they do with the new season, if we ever get to see it.
Yeah.
Now that Jeff Russo is recording the soundtracks one-on-one with all his musicians in their own homes. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
But I think out of all of that, of Discovery's history that we'll always look back on, I think Saru was one of the unifying points that people weren't. I think people can't help but be intrigued. Once the creatives go to the trouble to design a backstory and design a new alien culture, because we can't have a token alien on a new show's bridge without it being a new invented culture. Oh, look, it's Denobulans. Oh, look, it's it's the Bajorans. But they spend so much time, the backstory and then the design. What is the alien design? How do they work on the, Odo's mask as a shapeshifter evolved the first year or two. Even Worf's mask, his prosthetics, the first season got better.
Oh yeah, if you look at them season to season to movie to DS9, Worf's had cosmetic surgery. He looks his forehead has changed a lot.
And this is not my term. When he lost his Donna Reed hair was when he really leaped forward. That was Mike Westmore's or Renee. Anyway, what I'm saying about Saru is it's almost like people will pick apart any other Star Trek aspect, but if someone goes to trouble to invent a new culture, a new species, and then individualize that in a character, that we're going to get a lot of screen time on, because that's the Star Trek role of the outsider looking at humanity, right? The commenter, the commentarian, the contrary commentarian, and I think people, Saru was always kind of a unifying point. People could say, well, at least, I think most people would say, well, I don't like a lot about Discovery, but I love Saru. And he had such a different kind of alien. He almost looked like he was an action figure of plastic parts put together.
Right.
But the compelling thing in all those early promos, when they would run his token line about my species senses death. It's like, that's what we do. We're not into logic. We're not into war. We're not into being blue-blooded. We sense fear and death. And that was like, whoa. That was an instant, invite for people to be intrigued. And it's been evolved. And we finally got to see his people and his planet in the short treks, and as they evolved his arc. But what I've heard, what's been intriguing to me, and it's been compelling. And then, so that's his frame, that all of the drama that we see with all the other characters and the plot, and brother, has there been a lot of it, we see it reflected through his eyes, right? And his reflection, his reaction to it. And you were very intriguing to me, talking about your big disappointment here lately.
Yeah. So I'll get into the mental health side of this in the counselor's log in a little bit. But one thing that I loved about season 1 Saru, and in the short trek, I love his short trek. I love the story with his family, and this idea of a character that is biologically wired and evolved to experience anxiety in a heightened way. I think it's been such a wonderful parallel to those of us who, for one reason or another, might experience highly intense physical symptoms of anxiety. Some of us are born with the volume turned up on anxiety. We're just genetically wired to experience more of it. And for those of us, I think Saru has been this wonderful parallel of, hey, look, you might be wired to experience the world in a slightly different way. And here are all of the ways in which you can make such a big difference because you have this completely different view. Like, I loved that idea, that parallel with Saru. With Barclay, I always feel like Barclay is a great parallel to the more analytic aspects of anxiety, where you get lost in worries and thoughts and how do people think of me and what's going to happen. And Saru has been so much the physical side of fear and experiencing the world in a very heightened way. My frustrations with Saru going into season 3 is he evolved into a character who now seems to be fearless, and I like what he had to go through, and he had to overcome this thing that his culture just feared because of the conflict on his planet and all of that backstory. I love that. But he seems to have turned into this fearless character, and that is just far less compelling and interesting to me. And I also think for those of us who might have struggled with anxiety, or who do struggle with anxiety, who connected with Saru for that reason, well, where does that leave us? Because we can't just go through this metamorphosis and change like that.
If it's any comfort, I would say we're not Kelpians.
Right.
And Saru is not human. So on one hand, our experience and our attraction to a character in a drama, in a TV show, even Star Trek, which is way above mere television, our attraction to a character doesn't mean like we're one for one. I would hope. I mean, having some help, we have a Venn diagram here of what we like about that character. And if something we appreciate, or if something, the richness of the texture of what we gravitate to, if that radically shifts in a way, then yeah, now I feel like I'm diagnosing. It can be upsetting.
Help me, Dr. Trek. Help me with my...
You're my only hope. Ooh, we're in trouble. By the way, if I didn't say it up front, you got Dr. Trek here and Dr. Ali, and what's best of all, one of us is actually a real doctor.
But,
but what I'm saying here
it might be hard to figure out who's whom during our episode.
At moments like this. Depends on what you're after. What are you hanging your shingle over? No. What I'm trying to say here is, yes, if what initially attracted you to a character has shifted significantly. Here's the thing, though. Discovery and Saru are very much an unfinished book right now.
Right. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
what just struck me, I hadn't even thought about this, but this is why collaboration is so important, people, within a pandemic or not. There was a time when the character of another famous Star Trek commentator alien, a 5-letter word starting with S, let's say. When Spock lost his human side, when Spock went to be all emotion, basically talking about his revival in the Search for Spock. And we saw the art, and then he came, Spock was human, half human, but he was trying to suppress the human. That was his whole, he was actually giving us, we thought we were watching a Vulcan every week. We were watching a half human, half Vulcan.
Yes.
Tuvok was our first real Vulcan, and Sarek and all of that, right?
Yep.
And then we get the trauma of the motion picture, and then the Wrath of Khan, and then the Search for Spock, and then he swung the other way where he's trying to be all logic all the time and totally purge his human side, not just get away from it, but purge it. And there was a very sterile Spock there for a while, right? Until McCoy and Kirk and Adventure kind of pulled him back from that. But what you're saying about Saru, in the moment, we just had a very traumatic life event. I mean, my God, Saru, look, we're sitting here talking about Saru as an example of fear and anxiety, and I want to see what everybody thinks about this in the chat. I'm behind on my chatting, guys. So
the chat is firing at full cylinders.
But let me make this point here, because you just inspired in me. We're catching Saru mid-stride, and the very thing that you might have thought you identified with him, it might be a temporary, I don't say temporary, but it might be just, we're going to see what happens now. He may be like a Spock, and his pendulum swings may settle out into a new normal, but they'll still retain a lot. There may still be ways for fear to creep in, because not only has Saru, revolutionized his own character, he's revolutionized their whole friggin' society.
Yeah, and Night Angel DK said Saru's kind of defeated death. It might give a person too much confidence, which I really do identify with this comment. I'm someone who grew up with a massive amount of social anxiety. It was selective mutism when I was a kid, which sounds super cool, like an X-Men superpower. It's not. It means in certain situations, someone pressed a mute button on me, and it was for me whenever I left the home. That evolved into social anxiety, and with the help of a really good teacher in high school, I overcame that, and that's what inspired me to treat anxiety, become someone who's an anxiety specialist. But just backing up for a second, there was a period of time when I learned how to deal with social anxiety that I became too confident and became too cocky.
Compensated.
Right. And I flipped to the other end to the detriment of some of my own relationships. And if we see that angle with Saru, or if we see some of the consequences now of someone who has overcome a fear and might be swinging too much on the other end, that would be a beautiful story too. Yeah. So I really appreciate that, Larry, this kind of holding up that like we are in the middle of a story. And this story is going in some weird directions anyways. Like we're going farther into the final frontier than any of us has ever gone
before. Where no
before.
Kelpian has gone before.
No.
I was, as you were speaking and talking about your own case, and I know it's pop culture magnified, but I'm just thinking of Raj on The Big Bang Theory and his selective mutism around women, and it was played for comic effect, but I think that I don't think they ever went and they eventually had him get some counseling, get some experience, and grow out of it in a healthy way. But just as far as a handy reference point there.
Well, I think that's a really great
However
segue. Larry, I think that's a really great segue to the counselor's log. This is our segment where I am looking at these elements through the lens of a psychologist. And boy, is there a lot of talk about related to mental health here, Larry. I got a lot to say. So I already sort of mentioned how Barclay maps on nicely to someone who might struggle with social anxiety. He also maps on nicely to someone who might struggle with something called generalized anxiety disorder. So social anxiety is when people really struggle with situations that might trigger evaluation by other people. So interactions with other people, public speaking, presentation situations, dating situations, forming new friendships, maintaining those friendships, all that kind of stuff. People tend to fear being seen as stupid, strange, weird, unlovable, all of that kind of stuff. And we see that with Barclay anytime he's interacting with other people. But we also see someone who is struggling with generalized anxiety, and that is any situation that produces uncertainty is quite difficult for Barclay. He might tend to worry a lot, second guess himself, seek out reassurance. And what's so cool about Barclay is he also has experienced some phobias. We see him struggle with transporter phobia and this fear of developing transporter psychosis. Was that the illness? Mm-hmm. Right.
That was the hardcore edition of the
Right. And that maps on nicely to what we know about anxiety. People who have struggled with anxiety for a long period of time, they're very likely to experience another anxiety disorder or maybe depression as well. So the fact that Barclay is struggling with these kind of things really maps on nicely to the kinds of anxiety that are very much related to thoughts. And what I like about Saru is he does so well capture the experience of people who might be physically wired to experience more anxiety, or people who might have gone through traumas and be much more on guard and have this hyper arousal, hyper vigilance, where you're just much more on guard. People who go through trauma have that. And many of us might be experiencing a little bit of both of these things right now. We might be struggling with uncertainty about the future and be thinking about worries and having a hard time calming our minds. And some of us might be feeling very on guard when we go outside, wearing our masks, looking to see where other people are. So I think these characters so well.
I hope wearing your mask.
I hope wearing, yeah. I mean, it protects other people. Putting up your shields in this situation is what's protecting all of us. It's keeping all of us safe. And there's other elements too that I love about these characters, like Barclay's holodeck pursuits. That's not what the episode's called. The episode's called
Hollow Pursuits.
Hollow Pursuits. What great wordplay. Larry, I miss those short episode titles that have a little bit of wordplay, references to Shakespeare, references to literature.
And no Latin.
Yeah. Recently, these episode names are like titles and theses onto themselves. Not as much of a fan of that. But let me back up.
The world is hollow and I've touched the sky. Yeah.
What I love about the holodeck adventures is they also map on nicely to what we might experience. Some of us might be using video games as a way to cope, which can be very healthy unless it starts to get in the way of your life.
Until it's not. Yes.
Until it's not, yeah. And I always tell my patients, we want video games and books and movies and stories. We want them to be a power-up and not a side quest for you. We want them to help you be able to deal with what's going on in your life and connect with other people. We don't want it to be a side quest that takes you away from your life. And we see that play out with Barclay. My problem, Larry, in the counselor's log, I don't think either of these characters really got great mental health treatment or support. We have Barclay to thank for probably 90% of any time poor Deanna Troi was even shown until Nepenthe
on Picard.
Right.
And she's in retirement and does a bang up job with poor Jean-Luc. There was we saw her counseling one person and I've gone blank on the character name, that Q mocked. But then after that, it was pretty much, she got a set thanks to Barclay.
Yes.
A real one.
Yeah.
Nicely decorated. It's like one of that aspect. It's amazing to me, the first season of Deanna, when they decided to tone down the empathy, the telepathy, out of the pilot. Pain, there's such pain. I feel the pain. And it was like, well, now what are we going to do with her? And it was like, well, she's a counselor. Why don't you have her counsel? And then she turned into the language person and the captain's ambassador to new cultures person. And it was like, but she's a counselor. She could counsel. But thanks to Barclay, we did see her. We even saw her counseling when it got into the Voyager and the Pathfinder project and all that. We even saw her counseling on vacation. And making house calls.
So I definitely agree with that. And
the curve went up, is what I'm trying to say here.
Someone mentioned that in the comments as well. If it wasn't for Barclay, we would not get all of the character development that Deanna Troi got. And Rebecca just mentioned, what about Barclay's hypochondria? A lot of his health anxiety. I think I can identify with him in the age of OMG, I sneezed. Do I have COVID? Absolutely. And a lot of people who struggle with generalized anxiety are also vulnerable to health anxiety. We see those things sort of map on together. So I love that we got a Star Trek series where one of the senior staff was a mental health therapist. I love that. The problem is, and Marina's mentioned this as well, is the way therapy was done in Star Trek The Next Generation and Star Trek Deep Space Nine with Ezri. It was really based on very old ideas of what therapy is. And the scene that just grinds me, Larry, is plexing, where Deanna says, "Oh, have you tried plexing? It's this, it's this relaxation.
Relax that muscle in your neck."
Yeah. Which is like based for a very different species. It might be a betazoid technique, and betazoid physiology might not map onto human physiology. I think we had a great opportunity for Star Trek to show us what evidence-based treatment for anxiety looks like, and we didn't quite get it. And what it looks like is exposure therapy, helping people to unlearn some of these associations to form brand new ones, learning how to face these situations, experience that fear, how to experience it in a healthy way. We didn't quite get that. The other thing with Saru that I think could have been cool to see and we didn't. This is something I don't think Star Trek does too well, although I don't know how much science fiction does too well. And I actually think Discovery is doing this the best out of all the Star Trek series. How do you get these different species who come from different climates and different environments and have differently wired nervous systems? How do you get them to all interact in the same climate? So the Discovery Enterprise, Defiant, Voyager.
You talking about physical climate? You talking about the environmental system? Or what are you talking about a metaphorical? Oh, okay.
No, quite literally the environmental systems, the life support systems, Larry.
If you will, yeah. Environmental engineering, but I like you. Yes, the life support.
They all
like Cardassians want the rooms colder.
Yes.
All of that down that line. Vulcans want it hotter. Yeah.
So if a Kelpian, if their nervous system is so quick to respond to threats, they would likely need to learn ways to deal with that so that they can function in this environment. Otherwise, all the beeping, the booping, the alerts going off, all the rocks that fall through starships for some reason, although I haven't seen those quite so much in Discovery, that would really be overwhelming to Saru in a way that people who are vulnerable to panic disorder can get overwhelmed in a crowded environment, or someone who has autism can get overwhelmed in a big, unstructured social situation. So I would have loved to see Saru see some of the skills that he might use to help himself cope by being on the bridge, or maybe he's prescribed medication that brings his nervous system down to a level that allows him to interact in this environment. It seems like the environment is built for humans in Star Trek, and we don't see how other aliens cope. Although in Discovery we do see some aliens wearing those things, and there was that alien in The Next Generation who had a gas.
They were benzites. We saw benzites. A couple of them. Yeah, yes. Yeah. That was just a breathing and the and now I've gone blank on her. It was the character of Nan, but she was a benzite too.
Yes.
Yes, and had her breathing. Don't make this harder than it is, Larry. She was yeah.
We are getting a lot of love for Barclay when he returns to Earth, and those scenes with Troy on Voyager. I think those are some wonderful scenes of.
Well, it was a great case, a rare case of a character across all the series, and let's not forget First Contact, and another aspect of fear and anxiety, even in a positive, what ought to be a positive vein. And just call it starstruck, being starstruck, being overwhelmed in the company of a celebrity and being either, gone stone cold, unmutable or mutable, or just, that rattle off at the top. Oh, no, I'm so glad to see you. And you're making a fool of yourself. You're just uncorked. Either way, however you react.
Larry, we all can identify with that. If you've been to a Star Trek convention and you're meeting someone who you've really looked up to, we've all been in those moments. Rebecca just said, I always thought of plexing as a placebo, and whoa, if that was a deep level intervention that Counselor Troy was doing to give Barclay something that he might think it works for him, just to get him out of her office. I love that idea. That completely changes my view on plexing. Oh man.
You were talking about maybe plexing there was a betazoid gland up here or something, or a muscle that's what that really works on, and she was just being uninformed. There was a deleted scene where Deanna Troi stood up and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Barclay. In humans, the plexing gland is down here."
Oh.
It's a total. That's it. See, I'm too good. That was a total BS takeoff on McCoy talking about Vulcan heart location. It was a deep cut. Okay, forget it. Forget I said it. I sucked you in too well. No, there's no such deleted line. But there could have been, and it would have been a wonderful throwback to McCoy and Spock, and where he says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Spock, your heart is down here." You can't see me doing the fist. I'm doing the fist on my lower abdomen here. Okay.
Well, Larry, with that, let's get into the K3 factor. This is the segment of life support where Larry brings it all back to the original series, and the K3 factor, of course, being the reference to McCoy's little dial of mental health.
Aside from a psycho tricorder, it's like the only reference to mental, and aside from wacky doodle chairs in mad scientists, labs and things. And Garth's cure in a bottle. No, the K3 factor was on the biomonitor, and every week I just try to come back and bring a little Trekland here, backgrounding to our topic. And I was a little thin. You'd think fear and anxiety. Except that I just want to say that Barclay got picked up as a recurring character, and the way the Writers Guild works is if you create a character, this is why you see credits on the pilots of the series the way you do, where the creators of the series are always in the mix. On a story, even if they immediately back off and don't write a lot, because they're doing 52 other shows, because you're paid. If your character is used ongoing, this is why T'Pau was not made the regular character on Enterprise. It was a new character, because then they would have paid the Theodore Sturgeon estate from Amok Time. Every episode of Enterprise would have been paid for the character of T'Pau. But I'm saying this because Barclay, a woman named Sally Caves, who was not a full-time writer, she was actually a linguist and a professor. She created the character of Barclay, and it was and Dwight Schultz is so incredible.
Oh yeah.
It was one of the few times that Star Trek actually paid an outside person who wasn't even in the industry really, paid an outside person, for the recurring, or paid off anyway, to reuse a character recurringly. And there's no record that she had a big,
Wait, really?
A big record, yes.
Wow. That...
No, wait. What are you relaying here? The fact that,
The first time we had a recurring character like that.
well, I'm not. I don't know if it was the first time, but sitting here thinking about it, it's like the big because usually showrunners and their staffs will reserve the right to. I mean, people pitch stories all the time, especially back when they had the open policy, and they had 26 shows a year to fill. And people, if somebody was saying, and this could be a recurring character, it would always, unless it was somebody on staff or a friend of somebody on staff, it was always like, no, thank you. We'll create something different and go with it or something. But they didn't want to be beheld to be, again, like I said, with T'Pol and T'Pau, they didn't want to be beholden to paying some outsider who knew what Star Trek would do 100 years from now. And are we going to be stuck paying for this character for forever? When if you're a staff writer, it's just a part of your contract. It's like being a licensee. You're just contributing to the pool, of Star Trekness. So Sally Caves wrote Hollow Pursuits, and she, it was one of the few times that a character, he's not regular, but he's recurring. I mean, like O'Brien, you could say, was in the pilot of Next Generation, used years later, and Ensign Rowe was a creation of, I want to say, Michael Piller. So you can see that. Anyway, it just struck me. Our K3 factor this week is not being afraid to go out and pick up some freelance writer's character and keep paying them for it all down the line. So maybe not as shocking to you as last week's K3 factor.
Oh, last week was my favorite. Well, with that, let's go on to
it's time for an away mission.
It's time for an away mission. This is the part of the show where I give you some way in which you can apply what we're talking about to your own life right now. And gosh, I kind of meant this as a joke, but my away mission for this week is to help you all find your own plexing technique. But now with this headcanon that thanks to Rebecca that I've developed, that maybe this is a placebo. Maybe that was not the best name, but whatever.
Doctor?
Yes.
These days, would a placebo not be so bad?
A placebo is pretty good. I give placebos to my daughter all the time. She's 2.5, more than 2.5 now, and she'll bump her head. And when you kiss your child's boo boo, that's a placebo effect. And right now it's ice. She wants ice on anything that if she just like slightly bumps her shoulder, she'll want ice for it, and it's hilarious.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say something like you tell her you're slipping a little vodka in her juice.
Oh no!
But it's really water.
No.
Oh, okay.
That is not what I meant. So, real life plexing. What does that mean? We all need coping skills right now, and that what is a coping skill for anxiety? A coping skill for anxiety is something that you can do, or something that you can hold, something that helps you to make contact with your fear in a flexible way. And so we all need something like that helps us. And I've got a video on my YouTube channel called 10 Quick Ways to Reduce Anxiety. You all should go watch that if you're interested in this. But I just want to share one thing that I've been doing. The thing that I've been struggling with most this week, or not this week, for weeks and weeks, is how to calm my mind when I'm going to sleep. Like, that is when I get full of worries about the future and what's going to happen and where do I go. And just to give a little sneak peek of the next video that's coming out of my channel, it's all about sleep and how to deal with this. Larry, the thing that has helped me so much is something that I never really did before intentionally, and that is actually visualization. So usually this will be no surprise to people who know me well, but usually the thing that helped me to fall asleep, I did this without even realizing it, is imagining a better future. Who would have thought the thing that helps a Star Trek fan fall asleep is imagining a better future? For decades, that's what I've done. But with this pandemic, it's been very hard for me to do that, just because the future is so uncertain. It's all of us are living in the undiscovered country right now. It's all this uncertain future.
Just here's my prognosis for you.
Yeah.
Just think of these times when your normal thinking of a positive future doesn't cut it for you at night. Just think of these times not as a standalone Star Trek, but as a serialized Star Trek.
Huh.
And each episode is not going to be an end all. Think of it as you're in for the long 10-episode arc.
Larry, you're on fire today. Dr. Trek is bringing it home. I love that idea because that idea helps me to think of Saru and Discovery and all of that. I have been doing time travel. So instead of thinking about the best, a positive future, what has helped me so much is to think of a moment from my past that makes me feel so happy and good. And the trick to doing good visualization, like imagination is the next best thing to reality. Humans are so good at imagining different things. And the trick to really making it work is a lot of sensory details. Any sounds or images or the feeling of touching different things or textures and smells.
3D holography.
Well, yeah, if we had it, gosh, that would really solve a lot of insomnia problems. For me, this sounds corny, but the thing that helps me to fall asleep is thinking about my wedding day, honestly. It went really well. And I think about the music. I actually listened to some of the songs that were played. I can look at some of the images. I think about there was this moment when my whole wedding party, we were walking through this park in New York, and we all got popsicles. And we all ate popsicles, and I love that moment. Me and my closest friends, we were all together having popsicles. I get into that zone, and the more I'm able to latch onto those details, it helps me to just fall asleep and calm myself. So we all need a little plexing. So watch that video, 10 quick ways to reduce your anxiety, on my YouTube channel, and think about what is one thing that helps you to make contact with the kind of situations that you want to be in. And that is real life plexing. That is a real life coping skill.
I'm such a Midwesterner, Southerner. All I could think of you telling that story was, oh my God, I hope you weren't wearing white tuxes.
No, we were wearing gray suits.
Okay,
I forget what color shirts we were wearing. Probably white.
I was just seeing your popsicles dripping all over your wedding gear.
They were definitely dripping. But
and you on going, what were you thinking? No.
My best man was making sure everyone was all clean. So thank you for that, Lowen. Thank you for keeping us all clean. And with that, we're gonna close up the away mission and head into my favorite segment, the hailing frequencies. We're gonna open up.
Bleep there, we need a little
yeah. We're opening up those hailing frequencies. Someone mentioned earlier.
Right. we've had that. I just want to say, Dr. Ali, I guess I told someone this must be a very intense topic for you because I think it was our friend and would-be Skype caller Dan said, I guess this is the episode of Life Sport where our comments are less discussed by our pair of hosts. Time to throw these guys out and get some new hosts. Yeah.
Only 5 episodes in, and we're already being replaced.
They forgot.
It's not. This is an episode where I've got a lot of strong feelings. I mean, anxiety is what I do, what I've lived. It's my thing. But this is what hailing frequencies is for.
Especially,
So if you'd like to talk to us on Skype, send us a message at Life Support Host. That'll get you to us, or let us know in the comments too. Hey, I want to talk. This is my Skype username, and we'll get you on the show. But this is also a time where you can appear on the show if you want to appear, or we're going to take comments and kind of focus on some of this discussion.
I'm scrolling back in the chat anyway.
Did you do a little cue?
I was just saying, you said you could appear in the show, and all I thought it was like, yes, it's a Q flash. That was the official name in scripts, by the way. And now a Q flash.
Oh, really? It was called a Q flash.
That's what it was called. The visual effects guys would call it. Well, now here's where we stuck in a Q flash because it was that, thing. I'm just looking at some of our past chats and some of them from earlier on. So, Cairo47, I like the name.
Yeah.
Said, I think Doug Jones, this is another example of what an astute actor Doug Jones is. Kairos47 says, I think Doug Jones said that Saru went on to the extreme of no fear in basically the enthusiasm, right, of having lost it and he'll come back to a healthy, quote unquote, amount of fear in season 3. He won't go off on a tear, which just to me just shows what a brilliant actor Doug Jones is, that he had the foresight to agree with us today.
Yeah.
Way ahead of time. Yeah.
Libby and Jared have mentioned COVID dreams are really a thing.
Ooh,
so that is absolutely true. There's two things happening right now. Your dreams are sort of one way in which your mind is just kind of working through the memories and thoughts of the day and combining them with the past and doing all sorts of things. And some people would completely disagree with that and say we have no idea why we dream. And, that's true as well. So dreams are a weird thing. But two things are happening. One is so many of our thoughts are about this pandemic. So that's being reflected in our dreams. The other thing is a lot of us have disrupted sleep right now. So we're having a hard time sleeping through the night. And when you don't get good sleep, you actually remember your dreams better. And it's a weird paradoxical thing.
Wow.
But because so many of us are not getting good sleep, the dreams are sticking out in our minds more than they would normally. So that's my long way of saying that is our new normal. You are not alone. We are all experiencing that.
I used to remember dreams when I was a kid much better than as an adult. But what I've realized over the last 10 or 20 years is the time when I remember a dream now is, and I've seen a pattern, if I'm awakened to some extent, like early in the morning, like 6 or 7 or something, and I still get, but I just get like an hour to sleep a little more, but I drop right back into somehow a deep sleep that you wouldn't think you would get that late in your cycle. I will remember the dreams of that fall back to sleep time, that little hour time that I had after I was awakened and then somehow found a deep enough sleep to dream again. Mm-hmm. And then I'll wake up and realize I had a dream, and then I'll think, wow, I don't remember my dreams much anymore. And then I've seen that pattern of being awoken and then thrown back. So it's almost like it was close to the end, so I remembered it.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, is you're more likely to wake up, and when that happens, if you have a hard time falling asleep again, you'll probably remember your dream more. But most of us actually wake up in the middle of the night and then go back to sleep. We don't remember that we did that. But when it's harder to fall back asleep, then the dream sticks out more. So if you're struggling with those dreams and they're having some kind of impact on you, the old idea was you go to an expert and they can interpret your dreams, and we don't really believe that anymore because dreams are so weird. There's no one dream means something to everyone. There are some kind of stress dreams that are pretty common, but it's really hard to determine meaning out of it. The best person equipped to determining meaning of the dream is you. So if dreams are sticking out in your mind and they're having an impact on you, just kind of scribble them down really quick and then talk it through with a friend. And the big question to really ask yourself is, what does this dream mean to me? Or how has this dream impacted me? And that's a discussion to have. You can have that discussion with a friend. You can have it with a loved one. And that's really the best thing you can do to kind of work through some of these dreams if you're struggling with that.
Yeah. And I should say that if you guys, we'll repeat this at the end, but every week we put up a poll so you can help us pick next week's solution. We've got several ideas outlined. Don't worry. But we put up 3 or 4 each week on our Facebook page. And if you're not there, please go and, when we're done, go and like our Facebook page, Life Support Live. There's a poll there every week. And then on my personal Twitter at Larry Nemecek and my, what's that other thing now? Instagram, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. I'll run the same poll there. But we put up at least 3 options to vote. And sleep has very much come to prior conversations here. And it's been one of our topics in the hopper, as it were, for the last few weeks. So if you want to, we some of this talk about sleep and dreams, maybe, or dreams deserves its own topic. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll get to this. We'll focus on this in one of these upcoming weeks.
Clayton has a great comment here that I think I can shed some light on. Clayton asks, I'm just annoyed that my dreams keep using imagery from my 80s high school time. I'm 57, so you think my brain would use better, more up-to-date settings.
Have you updated your dream app there?
Right. Yeah. Did you do a system update, Clayton? Because you just plug yourself in and update your settings. So here's the thing. I might have an answer for you. Not all memories are created equally. for two reasons.
I want that on a plot.
Yeah, not all memories are created equally. Your memories from your experiences from your teenage years and your 20s seem to be very formative in influencing who you are. And Larry, I think this can also help explain our fandom conversations that we usually have about like what your Star Trek is and how we all get upset 20 years later when there's a new version of Star Trek that's very different from your version of Star Trek. It's because your teenage years and your 20s, those memories are much more important. And here's why. Your mind really prioritizes new information, new experiences, surprising information, novel situations. And when we are in our teenage years and our 20s, we are more going through new experiences than we do in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. This is also why our perception of time changes, Larry. I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you were a kid, summer vacation felt like forever. And now, years can kind of go like this. And now in the pandemic...
A Q-flash.
The Q, yeah, whoosh, yeah. And then
I remember when I was, I don't know, I remember thinking, I don't know where it was, when it dawned on me that when you're a kid, say if you're 5, a year is 1/5 of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're 50, it's 1/10 of your life.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to think about it, and that's why all memories are not equal, and that's why this pandemic will impact kids much more differently than it'll impact adults. Like, a lot of people graduating high school and college are so down about missing out on these experiences of prom and graduation and spring break and all of that. And adults might see that and be like, well, what's the big deal? It's a very big deal for them because it's such a bigger chunk of their life than it is for us. And it's also a part of their life that'll never come back. So
but you're saying for us survivors, at one point when something big, when our initial take on our introduction to Star Trek, among other things.
Yeah.
At the time when we did, if we were a kid, it was a huge chunk. There was a lot less of life to have crowded it out. And now we at least carry the emotion attached to it. Yes. Even if Star Trek is still, well, maybe it is 1/5 of our world or 1/2 our world. But the initial, the greeting point or whatever you call it. Yes. The emotion tied to that is as big, even if it's not taking up the core in our brain, the memory space. The emotion space is still as big as it ever was.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying.
It's a convoluted way of maybe getting.
Yeah, your values, your ideals, your expectations, they're far more crystallized in your teenage years and your 20s, and those memories are just more. One of my favorite academic terms, salient. They stick out more. So that's what's happening with those dreams. I really love Jared's comment here. When this is all done and life with the new normal has begun, there should be a life support live weekend retreat at a Hampton Inn somewhere.
At a Hampton Inn? Okay. Hey, I'm all for that.
Larry, I'd love to host the.
I got to do a shout out to I'm going to just start calling. I've known Dan often by distance for a long time, but I have to call him our would-be Skyper Dan, who pointed out and corrected me, and thank you. Nan was a Barzan, not a Benzite. She was a Barzan, like the Barzan wormhole bidding folks. Bhavani. Yay, Larry. Pravir Bhavani. But there was a Benzite throwback after the two you saw early. The same actor played them in something Push, I think. Alan Push or something. Anyway, the two you saw, one with Wes and one later that was the arrogant one. There was a runabout pilot on DS9 that died when all it was like the red shirt of the runabout crew. Everyone else is on the planet and the runabout gets zapped, I think. Anyway, there was a throwback Benzite. But anyway, thank you, Dan, for keeping me up on my B aliens there.
Yeah, and Dan, I think it's the same. Dan's also mentioned we might have a latency issue. Larry, we just can't win. We change a couple of things and something happens. So thanks to a few people who have mentioned that, some audio, video stuff. We'll work on it. We'll see if we can improve that for next week, and we'll probably have a whole new problem that that you can all experience next week. So we're working on it slowly but surely. It's just Larry and I doing this. We would love to have someone
Especially
else.
when we don't have a Skype. When somebody said, "Are we having a big delay between your frame and my frame on the
Yeah.
output?" Oh,
Yeah, which is a new problem for us. We haven't had that
never
syncing issue, and we didn't have that
sinking
problem on.
feeling maybe, but not a sinking issue. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have that problem on Wednesday, so we'll try it out. We'll fix it when we did a audio test, video
But
test.
don't
on
let that
Wednesday.
scare anybody away from Skyping in with us. We've
Yeah.
got,
Yeah. If anyone
live
wants to
support,
join
live
us,
host.
we'd love to have you. Rebecca says, I guess that's why it's hard for us to identify with teens. For me, my prom grad was over 20 years ago, and I remember maybe 2 details from prom, none from graduation. So I'm like, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's for people who are younger. The other thing that they don't have. So we talked about Barclay and uncertainty and anxiety with Saru as well. Those of us who are older adults, we have gone through longer periods of uncertainty than most teenagers have. The first time a lot of teenagers really get an experience with uncertainty is if they apply to college. That's like months and months of waiting and not knowing what their future is going to be like. Adults have more experiences of learning how do you deal with uncertainty. That like dwelling on it all day and night is not a good thing. Like many of us have learned that at some point. So
The long fuses of life, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while none of us have gone through a pandemic before, we have adults are more likely to have gone through long periods of uncertainty and learning how do you tolerate uncertainty. But for teenagers and young adults, every first thing is a first thing, and you don't know how to deal with it. This is why breakups are harder for teenagers than they are for adults, because they do not know that at some point they will feel less sad. They don't know that because they've never experienced that before. So it's just every big emotional moment, it's just harder for teenagers. And their brains are wired a little bit differently too. Their frontal lobes haven't finished developing. Your frontal lobe...
They're immature, that's not a judgmental term, it's a descriptive term. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. The teenage brain is wired for learning new experiences. So the emotional part of the teenage brain, think of that as the accelerator on your car. The accelerator works very quickly for teenagers. The frontal lobe, the part that's planning and it controls emotions and thinks about the future, that's very slow to work. That's like the brain on the brake on the car. So they have a slow brake and a fast accelerator. That helps them to learn new things quickly. It also makes them much more emotional, and they're less equipped to deal with those emotions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to go through the chat. Someone, and I think it was Cairo, said when you talked about exposure as a therapy, talked about O'Brien talking about his spider Christina to get over his fear of spiders.
O'Brien had a spot. I don't remember this at all, Larry.
It's a 30-second scene as a tag with a Barclay episode, I think, in a Next Gen. When O'Brien was allowed to be young and foolish and an undeveloped character, and things like playing a cello popped in,
Huh.
Brian, really? Yes.
Huh. Yeah.
But that's exactly, making yourself go through things.
Yeah. I think there's some good examples of what exposure therapy is like in Star Trek. I think we've seen moments like that with other characters, but just with Barclay, I think it was just. I'll say this with Ezri. Ezri, when she was working with Garrick needed exposure therapy as well when he was experiencing
your favorite counseling scene and stuff.
Man, Larry, that
it's
episode.
That's another show.
Okay, thank you. Larry is my therapist this episode. Larry's keeping me level-headed. Ezri. So many great things about Ezri, and then also so many frustrations. Yes. Yeah. I've never met a Star Trek cast member I've not liked. I will say that. Everyone's been awesome.
I I'm looking for something. Take it, Ali. I'm looking for something to post in the chat here.
Well, okay, so we're also now getting some feedback that I might be on a delay as well. So,
well, if we're both delayed, then aren't we delayed together?
What are we? Maybe, Larry, we're just slightly in the future. Maybe, I think the problem is maybe everyone watching the show experiences time in such a linear fashion, and we, in such three-dimensional terms.
Let me put my prophets filter on the on the camera and get all glowy for you. Okay, because glowy implies a non-lineality. Okay. That's an old international symbol. Yes.
Night Angel DK says, "I love Garrick. He was so funny." Garrick was. It's
in
hard,
a deadly sort of way. Yes.
yeah. There isn't really a character on Deep Space Nine I don't love. I want to say Garrick was one of my favorites, but they were all my favorites. I love that crew so much. All right, one question. This is coming from Dan. How much do you think it's healthy to watch Star Trek per week? Oh, Dr. Trek, I'm going to let you take this one first. How healthy is it to watch Star Trek every week?
How healthy or
Yes.
how much is healthy? What was that?
Do you think it's healthy to watch Star Trek?
Oh, yes, at least 47 hours a week.
That's a lot. That's
okay.
That's 47.
Well,
that's basically 47 episodes.
Okay. Well, then 47 minutes is about one episode with commercials of the old school. So you got to have more than 1 hour a week. No, I think a lot of people a lot of people come home from work when they have work to come home from, and if they're not, then they get away from homeschooling the kids and fixing dinner and whatever else they've done at home these days. But a lot of people sit down. You see it all the time. I mean, how many in our chat? You watch a show a night. It's your spin down time. You know, and maybe if you're pushing it, you have a second. Even though your bartender says, "Hey, you've had your limit," you go for that. You go for a double, or it's a movie or it's a two-parter. Okay, fine.
Right. Or it's a serialized show, and you just have to watch all of season 6 of Deep Space Nine.
Esri wasn't in season 6. She was in 7. So
no, she's in season 7. That's why I watched season 6, Larry.
And you stopped. There was a whole bunch more to that show after the 6th season.
Oh man. Well, so I've got a video called "TV for Your Mental Health," which explores this question in a lot of detail. So you can check that video out. Larry's totally right here. I would actually be watching more Star Trek right now if my schedule wasn't so weird. So my schedule right now is my wife and I are working from home. We're trading off on watching our child while we're in Zoom meetings. And once she's asleep, we get to watch like one thing together before I have to then start doing work that I couldn't do during the day. And she's not a Star Trek fan, so we can't watch Star Trek together. But in the before times, Larry, watching Star Trek is how I did wind down. Working my way through different series, I would set up my phone and do dishes while I'm watching an episode of Star Trek, just because I hate doing dishes, and watching Star Trek made it more tolerable. It's how I fold laundry. It's how I often do things that I really don't want to do. It just makes them far more pleasant for me. So get back to that idea. Is it a power-up? Is it something that's helping you, or is it a side quest that's taking you away from your life? And there's usually a fine line there, but you'll find it, and then you can always pull back. That's fine. It's okay. Whatever helps you in this moment helps you in this moment.
Keep your short-range scanners open to those around you and some feedback. If people are going, "Wow, what's with you lately?" or what's Keep your blinders off as usual. If you start to have a warning bell go off somewhere, I'm getting a red alert right here. maybe you should listen to it. It's probably a good signal.
Yeah. Which is that gets back to a great concept in Star Trek, which is the briefing room, like the actual briefing room. The crews come together, and one of my favorite things about Star Trek is the captains take all perspectives from all people. They welcome dissent. They welcome opinions that might conflict with theirs. That is one of the best things a team leader can do, is create conditions where it's safe to voice dissent. And that spirit of taking in information from other people, that's what we need to do. So if you're getting information that might be like, hey, you're hard to get in contact with, or maybe you watched too much, you went to sleep too late, take in that information. That'll help. I also Libby had a really great comment here that I threw on the screen. I'll put it on again. Star Trek is great for rewatching because if I get distracted and miss part of it, it doesn't matter because I probably have the episode memorized. 100%. We tend to enjoy stories that we've already seen or read. So if you read a book again, or you're listening to music you already know, or a show you already know, you experience it and enjoy it better usually than you did the first time around. For one of those reasons, you know what to expect, and if you miss some, that's fine. Star Trek is great to watch when your mind is very distracted because you probably know these episodes and characters very well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which is why, a first-time watch is so distressing. It's almost like we want a new Star Trek. Be careful what you wish for, Lieutenant. You may get it.
Oh man, Libby also says D29 is my comfort watch. I think she probably meant Deep Space Nine. And Rebecca says, if I'm not watching, I'm usually reading the novels or fanfic or comments or writing my own fanfic. I usually get shirty if I don't have TNG in my daily life. Maybe that was a surly. I usually get surly if I don't have TNG in my daily life. There's so much wonderful stuff to explore. I really loved the Star Trek comics, and especially the Star Trek crossover with Doctor Who. I had a ton of fun reading that. Larry, I don't know if you ever checked that out.
I never. I'm not a big comics guy, and for years the comics were so disposable. And they were.
But I met you at a Comic-Con, Larry.
It's kind of hard not to meet people at a San Diego. I mean, come on. But but no, the crossover's a lot of fun. It's like the crossovers, especially the comics, are like legitimized crazy fan fiction. I mean, they crossed over Star Trek with Doctor Who, and the X-Men and the Ninja Turtles.
Yes, the X-Men. That was one of my first comics that I bought, was a Star Trek X-Men crossover in the early 90s.
Oh, has it been that long? Jesus,
it's been, yeah. That was a while back.
Things got crazy in the 90s. It was like, anything for ratings. If you buy this comic, will you come over and watch Star Trek? Please, please, please. Yeah. I'm just trying to catch up on our chat here. So I hope, people are still reporting. Is the audio are we still in?
I think there's still some sync stuff. We'll work on it. Rislin53 on Twitch says, not to get off topic, but relevant to binge watching sci-fi, I found myself binging Babylon 5 the other day. Larry, did you ever watch Babylon 5?
I'm just coming up the wet blanket today on these. I know I didn't. I started in and I kind of watched it go by, and I've met a lot of the actors, and a couple of the Trek creative people. Alan Kobayashi was in the art department. This was so wasted. Alan's a good friend. He's a great guy. He was working in there. He was like the Mike Okuda of Babylon 5 for a while. Mm-hmm. And he gave us a tour of the sets. They were just up in Santa Clarita here. And I was walking through, and about halfway through, I thought, I'm looking at these going, like, I don't watch this show. It's not like emotionally resonating about being all analytical and comparing them to Trek and all that. And halfway through, I'm like, there are about 47 million Babylon 5 fans who would kill me.
Yeah.
Why is he getting a tour and he doesn't care? And I would love to see this. So that's been my. Although I've appreciated the act and the arcs and what JMS did with the show, and the fact that it was so sole point of view of one writer. It was kind of revolutionary that way. Yeah. And of course the big DS9 Babylon. And there was a great Babylon 5 DS9 softball game of the crews.
No.
Shirts. And I want to say it was like, and they in Babylon 5 won, and they did T-shirts that said something like Babylon 9 Deep Space 4 or something, and it was cute with the score, you know.
That's I love that happened.
That's like a bonus K3 factor for you.
I know. We get that makes it K6. We've had now two of them. Tim says classic Star Trek like TOS and TNG is good for inspiration and lifting your spirits, not like the new iteration, which is just too dark and downbeat. So I mean, Tim, I'm gonna quote J.J. Abrams here and say you're right. And so is anyone who loves the new iteration. Like it's, we all can love and not like whatever version of Star Trek you like and dislike. That's a beauty of Star Trek. There's over 400 hours of it. So take what you like, take what helps you. And I will say, I actually, a friend of mine, Ryan, who was here last week and started talking about how much he thinks Tom Paris is the greatest of all time in the comment section. But Ryan got me into watching Farscape, which I had never seen before. And I was watching that in the lead up to this pandemic. And after the pandemic, Farscape is just... It's not a good one for me to watch because I haven't seen it before. The episodes are new. I have to really focus, and it's a little bit darker than Star Trek is for me. So for me, Farscape has not been a good one to watch right now, and I'm going back to the kind of stuff that it just makes me feel good. And that's okay. At a different time and a different era, these different versions of the stories that you're into, they might work better for you, and different versions might not work well for you, and that's totally okay. This is a big fandom. People can have differing opinions.
I got another quickie fix.
Yeah.
Just watch the finales of the season of all the new series.
Of all the series, just watch the finale?
Especially Discovery. Discovery is all about going from the darkness to the light. So just watch the light shows. Just watch the light at the end of the tunnel. Just watch the two-parters of the finale.
This person is on fire today with the Star Trek therapy.
Got your diagnoses right here. Yeah.
Oh, you're so
the
right.
Trek doctor is in.
If you just watched the finale of season 1 and 2 of Discovery, it's quite a fun ride that ends on a great note.
You got your inspirational captain speeches. You know,
Yes.
You got victory at the end, not dark, dark days.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is a whole topic, but I've said this on Trek Live Tuesdays Live. What we have to get used to is if it's going to be serialized and if it's only going to be 10 or 12 or 13 episodes, and they say each episode is like a chapter, take them at their word and think when you get all upset about the tone or the events in one episode, just think what you would do if you actually sat and watched like only one block between commercials of a classic episode, or you only watched one chapter of a movie on DVD on the chapter index. And then you went away for a week and came back to what, you know, you'd be all dwelling on that. Now, it's an hour versus 10 minutes or 8 minutes, but thematically, structurally in a story, that's what they're going for. So, you know, don't let yourself get all wound up about this expanded 10-minute section into an hour, because that's structurally, that's what it is. And they're going to, that, you know, there will be as many, Rag, I've gone blank, on the Free Cloud episode of Picard.
Oh, yeah.
There'll be as many of those. There'll be as many Nepenthes as there will be of Rags, New Rags, whatever it is.
Yeah.
New Rag City. I keep wanting to
this is the problem with some of these names in New Trek, which I do miss those older ones.
Well, we haven't had them for 10 years yet. So
that's true. That's true. A couple of things. So one is a question for everyone watching from Night Angel DK. Is there some Star Trek books that are must have? Only have 2 Star Trek books. One is Nice Looking, the classic episodes. The other is Star Trek Cross Stitch patterns. So if you have recommendations, just let us know in the comments. One thing I want to say about New Trek, Larry, is there's always bits and pieces that I love, whether it's Star Trek Picard or Star Trek Discovery. And one of the things I love about Star Trek Discovery, especially season 2, is Captain Pike. I love that captain. And I think we should probably,
You should start a movement, Ali, because I've heard nobody else say that.
Right. Well, Ed, I know you discussed this yesterday, but there were comments early on about Star Trek Strange New Worlds has been announced. And this is going to be a Star Trek series that explores that era, Captain Pike, that Spock, number 1, and that crew, the pre-Kirk crew of the 1701 No Bloody A, B, C, D, or E, or J, or F from the game. So, what do y'all?
Letters.
Yeah. What are y'all thinking about Strange New Worlds? I'm very excited because I cannot get enough of this captain.
I think I'll say one thing because I want to see what everybody says too, and I want to give everybody a chance to talk about something that's news breaking actually in Life Support Live. But I thought it was very interesting. I mean, they've been working on this show for months. It's been like one of the worst kept secrets ever, which is, and Strange New Worlds, you go and you look on union websites and you look on different places, you could have seen it. For one thing, at least we'll save the clickbait toxic YouTubers the debate of what to call the acronym, because it's SNW. Okay, can we settle on that? It's there. But what I thought was intriguing in all the announcements and all the bland, the CBS press release quotes and all that, they did a wonderful, which is something we haven't seen before. But each of these series is so unique, and I'm going to talk. This is my topic for Trekland Tuesdays Live at 1 Pacific on Tuesday on Facebook. And I hope everybody can join me for that, and we have interaction chat there too. But they did a video of the 3 leads. Just they're all at home in lockdown, but they all did one of the and Ensign Mount said something that was not contained in all the bland CBS boilerplate, where he basically looks at the camera and it's like he's using code. It's like, hey, Trek fans, I'm using code words now. You know what I mean? He says, yes, and we're all looking. It sounds very on the nose here, very corporate, but he says yes, and we're all looking forward to getting back to work and bringing you some classic Star Trek that is uplifting and optimistic. And I was like, that was like screaming at me, hey guys, no more dark. We were gonna do traditional Star Trek standalone show, or mostly standalone, maybe some running. All Star Treks had running arcs, but the heavily serialized things that you're lost if you missed an episode. But that just screamed out that, like, we're doing it. We heard you, whether I had anything to do with it or that was the plan, and I'm happy to go along with it. But he got that message out there. And for anybody who is listening closely, and for folks that have, like, ever since Discovery, I want my optimistic, futuristic. I think that's what we're going to get with Strange.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what those characters just exude that optimism about the future. And I know, Larry, you and I have slightly differing opinions, but I love that bridge. I love that bridge of the Enterprise.
It's pretty.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
I want to hang out there. Look, I mean, nothing can replace the original series bridge from the original series. This is a different take, and I love it. It's beautiful. I want to share some of these comments for recommendations for books. Death in Winter, post-Nemesis TNG novel by Rebecca. Imzadi by Peter David. Jared is recommending here. Dan also recommends, I don't know if you heard about this, Larry, but there's a guy, Larry Nemecek, doing a great show about books on Fridays, so we can check that out as well.
He beat me to it. I was going to say, if you'll notice, all these book recommendations are like they're fiction.
Yes.
Some of us want our meat and potatoes Trek as just cool on the either making of or canon Bibles and technical journals.
Jared also says anything with Peter David's name on the spine is a good one. So lots of great recommendations coming in through the comments. Thank you, everyone who is recommending that. And gosh, Larry, lots of love here coming in for Captain Pike. I'm more excited about Strange New Worlds than I have been since Enterprise. A lot of folks are very excited for this series, and I cannot wait Here's another recommendation from Clayton. My favorite fiction Trek books are How Much for Just the Planet and The Final Reflection by John Ford. One is funny and the Marx Brothers, and one is a Klingon epic. Who can say no to a Klingon epic? So we're getting some great recommendations here. K-Rod. Or Cairo, I'm sorry, 47. Cairo, I'm sorry. Getting my streams crossed here. I'm very interested in how they'll write the Spock #1 dynamic, as Spock took over the cold, unemotional role they originally had intended for #1. Yeah, Larry, that's going to be very interesting to see how those two characters get fleshed out and how that dynamic's going to play out. I don't know what folks thought of the short trek that was Spock and #1 trapped in a turbo lift, but I think we get a taste there of what their dynamic's going to be. And this Spock is a very I don't know if they set the show there, and do we know that yet, Larry? Where in the timeline Strange New Worlds is going to be set? Is it the beginning of their mission or Discovery or
well,
later?
This is what I was saying on that quickie flash that I did Friday afternoon. So canonically, we know that Pike had the Enterprise from 2250 to 2265-ish when we know Kirk was there. So 14, 15 years. And the Telosian incident was 2254. So he'd been captain for about 4 years, enough to get world weary. And then he had another 9 or 10 years after that. And we also know now, thanks to Q&A, that Spock came aboard. Well, we know the dating originally, but we saw it personified. Spock came aboard right before the Cage, basically, within the year. So he'd only been there for a month or 2 or 3. And we know that #1 was there when Spock came now, thanks to Q&A. So whether they set these, I'm like, well, there's 4 years one way, there's 9 or 10 years the other way. They'll probably put it in the post-Telosian Pike years. And then the Discovery year happens about 2257. So there's like 4 years and then a 3 year and then a 7 year chunk of time. Whether they will maybe do some in earlier and then zoom ahead and do some post, maybe they will include both of those the two events we know about are Talos 4 and the Discovery year. And maybe they'll set some stories in and out of all that in order.
Well, and we have an endpoint. There is a point where Pike sort of faces his ultimate destiny there, and that will presumably be the end of the show. I don't know how many seasons we're going to get of this. He doesn't leave the Enterprise because of he's a fleet captain, but he doesn't leave the Enterprise that we know of. I mean, he turns over the ship to Kirk before the cadet ship accident happens. Oh, right.
Right. They all talk about it and at the time of I was watching today, Commodore Mendez is saying something like "poor devil," like it had just happened a few months before. Because Spock wouldn't sit there and let him fester for 3 years and then go, "I think I'll go save him now." And kidnap him.
Right.
It all happened fairly quickly before Menagerie, which is like a year into Kirk's first year.
We have a lot. There's a lot of runway here.
He can totally turn the ship over to Kirk and still be, intact.
Yeah. The other thing here that's also, speaking of uncertainty, who knows when we're going to see this show, Larry? They haven't started production on this series, right, before the pandemic occurred. So presumably they're writing scripts, maybe doing pre-production, but who knows when this show will get filmed? Who knows when we're going to see it? Who knows when we're going to see season 3 of Discovery?
Well, and I know a couple of the writers on Strange New Worlds, and I can actually read. I'm just going to tell everybody now, so please don't tell everybody I leaked this, but the whole first season of Strange New Worlds happens during the Great Box Dimensional Crisis of 2255, and everybody exists in a temporal void of little squares, and it just almost destroys Federation society, the paradigm of life that we know, because everyone talks to each other on view screens through little squares. It's amazing how they get
social commentary. Talk about social commentary.
Social commentary.
Could you imagine a Star Trek show where it's just they're on view screens? It's like the Parks and Rec reunion where they constantly have to explain why two people aren't in the same room together.
I sure hope that Starfleet Intelligence blog isn't on this call. They'll think I'm serious.
Dan is saying, not all the book recommendations in this chat have been fiction. I recommend the coloring books as they've been quite therapeutic.
Yes, I just saw that. Yes.
So, Larry, I'm going to do something I do every now and then on life support. I pull something from my library that I love that I recommend. Here I go. I will be right back.
Oh, live. This is exciting. Something that I would recommend.
Something that is my favorite is this right over here. This is my original Star Trek The Next Generation technical manual. I read this cover to cover over and over and over again at many different points in my life. If you are unfamiliar with this, on the top is in-canon explanations for how the technology works. And on the bottom are these wonderful comments from the writers about how that technology doesn't... Hey, there we go! Lori, we got to get a little thumbnail there of both of us holding our copies. There we are. So there's a lot of nonfiction, fiction. There's a lot of non-novelized Star Trek work. Larry did one of them, Stellar Cartography. We talked about that last week, which is fantastic if you're into the map side of things. A lot of great Star Trek stuff to explore.
I was even in a band before Wings, too. I did a book called The Next Generation Companion.
I've got that somewhere. That's in my big bookshelf elsewhere in my home.
Yeah.
Jessica,
this is why we do nonfiction. Somebody alluded to it earlier. This is why we do nonfiction Fridays during Corona crazy time.
Jessica says that I have that too. As does Rebecca. We've got a lot of love for the Next Generation technical manual. Larry, you know what I don't have? I don't have the Deep Space Nine technical manual. I need to pick that up. I know. Oh no, you have it. You have it. I'm gonna be so jealous. And there it goes.
I have it, and I'm so excited. I upset. Did I knock myself back into sync?
Your view screen? Yeah, your view screen just went into another dimension there.
Just to say,
Deep Space Nine, the technical. I'm so jealous. I love that it was in color. Rose, we want to thank you for your comments. I know you can't see what's happening here, but we've been loving getting all your comments, and thank you for tuning in week to week, Rose. It's wonderful to have you here. And feel free to connect on social media. Yes, we'd love to stay connected with you. Yeah. Cairo says, I don't have a lot of books, but I do have Stellar Cartography, which has some really beautiful star maps. There you go, Larry. We got some love for Stellar Cartography.
And a lot of factoids crammed. More factoids per square inch than even the companion.
Larry, did you know this fact? The technical manual, Jana says the technical manual in German has the same design, but it's in blue. I did not know that.
No, I didn't. And I used to be up with that. We would be in Germany a lot for conventions, and I would keep up with. In fact, the people that would like bootleg my books and Pocket didn't know about it, and write new chapters that had nothing to do with anything official. Funny.
Space Seeker saying, I have the Next Generation companion. Maybe one day, Space Seeker, you can get that autographed by Larry, and I'll sign it too. It might decrease the value, but I'll
leave it in my Zoom box, and I'll get it right back to
you. Larry, I think we need to talk about what we might be talking about next week. We haven't quite discussed this ourselves, but I think sleep and dreams might be.
That's been on the leaderboard for the last few weeks. Yeah. Sleep and dreams. What
That's
else?
Night Terrors and Voyagers, waking moments might be good starting.
There's
points
another
for that
couple.
discussion.
There's an Enterprise. I want to say it's one. No, there's an Enterprise that deals with sleep issues too. But
probably, yeah.
Whether they're from alien influence or what have you, which is it's a Star Trek. But you get into the thing about this and some of our topics and even other fields is it's an alien. It's a Star Trek-y science fiction-y setup. MacGuffin, but it opens the door to talk about all these issues and explore the feelings and everything involved, whether it's like by the book Human 2020 or not. paradigm. Yeah.
And then we have the Star Trek fandom, talking about the good, bad, and ugly side of Star Trek fandom. That's been on our agenda for a while as well. Anything else we've been debating? Anything you all want to see? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to include that on our poll. Where can people find the poll, Larry?
If I was going to say now, it's on my Twitter at Larry Nemecek, and I'll do it like one day, like middle of the week. And because Twitter and Instagram are that way. And Instagram, my stories, I'll put the poll up. Maybe I should do it twice in the week. But the best way, and that's Larry Nemecek's Trekland is my Instagram. But same index there is my Facebook. But Facebook, our page, and I put the link up. Just look for Life Support Live on Facebook. That poll will stay up all week long. And the Facebook poll will put 2 or 3 ideas in there. Yep. It's open where you can insert your own choice. And maybe you can start a movement and get some votes and get on the board. At least get on our radar screens, and we'll think about it, because we're totally open to hearing what everybody wants to hear.
Tim Hans just had a wonderful comment about the Voyager episode Night. I think that could be a great starting point to talking about helplessness and hopelessness and motivation and dealing with this a very difficult reality and not knowing when it's going to end or when it's going to change. Maybe we should put that in the poll. I love that idea.
Yeah. And just Scott Martin says that suddenly my sync is synced. Maybe it's when my camera got bumped. That would be...
You just had to tech the tech a little bit, Larry.
I just, brackets and all. Yeah.
So let's stay in touch throughout the week on our Facebook group, but also you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Ali Mattu. I'm Ali Mattu on Instagram, and then you can also find me on both Facebook as well as YouTube at The Psych Show. That is, I've got a new video coming out on insomnia this week, which I hope you'll enjoy. And I'm also going to be in a YouTube original series that premieres on Wednesday. It's called Sleeping with Friends. It is not what you think. It is a science-based reality competition show about sleep. I think you're going to like it.
Wow.
It might help you with your own sleep. Sleeping with Friends, it comes out this Wednesday. It's a lot of fun.
Is that the official Sleeping with Friends? It's not what you think. Is that the official?
No, it's not what you think.
Because it ought to be.
It is. That's the Ali Mattu add-on over there.
Okay. Well, I recommend that as the tagline. It's perfect. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. we got an old friend who just joined the video. Tekla says hi, Ali. Hi, Larry. Hi, Tekla. Good to see you. Wonderful. Hope you're safe and healthy. Thanks for joining the show as we're signing off. Larry, where can people find you?
I don't know, but I'm just still laughing that all I had to do was paw kettle the webcam, and that's and there's a deep cut if you go back, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm very excited. So this COVID time, I've expanded even the Trekland list of things here. So yes, I've mentioned 1 o'clock on Tuesdays. We do Trekland Tuesdays live with a topic a week and chat just like this. And some fun stuff. We look at the Parrot Analytics TV streaming ratings and other things. And then our podcast, The Trek Files, comes out every Tuesday. We have a pro guest. We pull something out of Gene's drawers and talk about it and the relevance to today. But right now in Corona time, Friday, we've mentioned it. For all the rest of the books, we have Nonfiction Fridays at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. That's 11. It's late for the British and all that. But that's a Zoom meetup, and there's a Facebook page for it with the book. This week, our book is a rare book that you had to be in the know to get. But this week, it is the USS Enterprise Officer's Manual, which was very techy. Only if, it was cool.
That looks like motion picture era?
Yeah, it was 80s era.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was filling in gaps. My friend Jeff Mandel, who became famous later on staff, was a big wig in the nonfiction world in the 70s and 80s. But you should watch Nonfiction Friday. Doug Drexler dropped in to Nonfiction Fridays, and we talked about the medical reference manual. So, David Gerald popped by when we talked about the making of the Trouble with Tribbles book, his book. So you never know what's going to happen on Nonfiction Fridays. And that's Friday. So there's a page for that. There's a page for our show. There's also a page, and I want to invite everybody. It's very short for Corona time because who knows what's coming down the pike, and I'm never going to quit using that pun. Right now, At LarryNemecek.com, number one, get on the list because I do polls and surveys and fun stuff on my newsletter, LarryNemecek.com. But when you go there, if you go to /simple 3 for 2, simple 3 for 2, I've got a special deal right now, 3 months of Portal 47 for the cost of 2. All the features, a lot of Portales are on with us today. We do an even deeper deep dive than I do in all my silly things I do during the week now online. And we just had Dan Curry on a couple weeks ago as our live guest night. So I invite everybody to do that. I've made it just for a 3-month span, so no, not a big commitment. And I hope everybody takes advantage of that because I love deep diving with everybody. I'm going to go back and look at the chat before we wrap up just to see.
Well, I think one of the best comments to summarize the week ahead comes from Jared, who says, great, we are pulling things out of Gene's drawers as Ali gets ready for sleeping with friends. I think that that pretty much covers what's happening in the
I want to thank Bill 23799 on YouTube who continues to refer to me as Cal Strickland, which was the little cameo thing I did in the original Strange New Worlds Phase 2 episode, like the dawn of YouTube and fan films. He remembers. So thank you, Bill. You keep doing pithy comments anyway, but he keeps calling me Cal Strickland, so I gotta do a nod there. Yeah.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us for another Life Support Live, and we'll see you all next week. Until then, live long and prosper.
Hey, everybody, yes, and trek well.